So here's our next video. We're making Caesar salad dressing. I'm going to modify the recipe just a little bit, just because of a concern the student had that she didn't have a blender. So in this case, we're going to be using, instead of cashews, we're going to use tofu. And so I'm going to use tofu instead of cashews. I'm going to use it in both the recipes. But you can substitute for cashews. Cashews and tofu in both of these recipes can be used interchangeably. I like to utilize, if I'm utilizing tofu in one of the recipes that's on the menu, I like to utilize tofu again. It helps with digestion, right? So if your stomach's already in the mode of digesting tofu, then when it finds it again in another recipe, it makes it more digestible.
Is there a difference in taste?
There is a little bit difference in taste, but not much. Not much. I'm not sure.
It's a little richer with the cashews.
It is. It is. I'm going to begin actually with the tofu, and I'm going to, for this recipe, it calls for a half a cup. This is silken tofu. It comes in a box. It doesn't need to be refrigerated. Silken organic tofu. The silken tofu is a little bit of a smoother texture, so it's better for making things that need to be a little bit smoother, right? And this is a dressing, so we want it to be nice and smooth. Okay, so that's our measurement. It's about a half a cup. In a recipe like this, if you're not baking, right, you don't need to be that precise. The next ingredient for this is our lemon juice, and that is a quarter of a cup. So what I'm going to do now is pour this lemon juice into the container of tofu, and I'm going to start mashing the tofu up. And you can get this mashed up really finely into smaller pieces. But once again, what we want it to be is smooth. So you can get a whisk and you can whisk it into smaller pieces, but for beginning, you need to just smash it against the side until it gets, it's going to get thicker and thicker as you go. I'm going to now use an immersion blender. That's a faster way to do this. So any sort of blender will do. You can do it with a fork. It just takes a tremendous amount of time. If you don't have a blender, if you have a food processor, even a small, tiny food processor, that also will turn this into something that's nice and thick like that. If you're doing this with cashews, it's really the same thing. You can do it with an immersion blender, or you can do it in a regular blender. You want to soak the cashews if you don't have a high-power blender. Soaking the cashews will make them much more blendable. The other option for you, if you have a food processor and not a blender, is to put the cashews dry into the food processor and turn it into flour, right? And that will, and then stir it up, whisk it up with the lemon juice to create this texture. From the previous video, we did our 2 tablespoons of garlic. We pressed them, and so we're going to pour that right into this container. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use capers. You can press the capers, or you can mince them, right? So you saw that in the other video, how we minced the garlic with that rocking activity with the big knife or a small knife. Yeah, you can mince them and put them in this dish. We're going to put this into our garlic press. It's going to become our capers press. And you see I'm being very generous with this teaspoon. I love capers.
What do the capers replace in traditional?
So in traditional Caesar salad, it's made with anchovies. And the capers provide that saltiness, flavor that's so delicious in Caesar salad. And actually, you could ask that question about other things too. You could ask that question about what is the cashews and the tofu substituting. Those are both substituting olive oil. So you actually could use olive oil in this recipe as a substitute for all or part of the nuts or tofu. All right, next in the recipe is a tablespoon of soy sauce. And I noticed in the recipe directions, I called the soy sauce tamari, which is a form of low sodium soy sauce. I don't have my tablespoon right here, so instead I'm going to use 3 teaspoons. Did you know 3 teaspoons equals a tablespoon? Well, it does. So now you know. We need a half a teaspoon of Dijon. You don't want to make this too mustardy flavored. I always like to serve salt and pepper rather than salt and pepper. This activity, I think it's just a little bit, it's actually more delicious to me. Put fresh salt right on top of your food. You can really taste it then. You can do this with a whisk, but we have already done the immersion blender, and so this is just coming out absolutely beautifully. I am one that always likes to taste as I go, see if we've got enough garlic, see if we've got enough capers. Now, we're not going to serve this until tomorrow, so those flavors are going to chill, and we're going to have time to meld. That's MELD, that's what especially sauces do after a day of being in the refrigerator. So I'm going to get a little piece of lettuce, and I'm going to taste this, make sure it's delicious. And if not, I will add a little bit more lemon, or I'll add some more capers, or I'll add some more garlic, or whatever my taste buds say sound great. But I want you to be sure that you taste as you go, right? That way your recipes always come out delicious. We're going to use romaine lettuce. That's the typical what we use for Caesar salad. You can get really fancy and you chill your plates and do all of that. You want to tear it if you're not going to be using it right away. The metal on the lettuce leaves will make them wilt and brown more quickly. So tearing is in order if you're not going to serve immediately. Great. Thank you.